Good afternoon. Welcome to Change of Pace. I'm Edith Krikorian. You most likely know me by now after all these years. I have today a very interesting program. I have the principal of the Seekonk High School, Dr. Jones.
How you doing?
And her sidekick, Dr. Beverly, Mrs. Hart. I always call her Dr. Hart, but Beverly Hart, who has been known in Seekonk, I think, for years. She knows everything you have to know. She doesn't want to, that's what I'm sure. But anyway, welcome and thank you very much, both of you, for coming.
Well,
I know how busy you are, especially you, and you also, you're in every committee there is. Dr. Jones, you have started, and I just want to pick it right out from that. You and I talked very shortly, and you were saying you would like to have the Seekonk High School more involved in town. What do you mean by that?
That's a broad question. I see Seekonk High School as an institution, obviously, in town, but I see it as something that should be an integral part of the town, a part of the larger community. And what I mean by that is we should be reaching out to the community and making stronger ties with the community, whether it's through a student volunteer program, whether it's basically opening the doors so that the community can see what we're doing inside the high school, because we have a lot of interesting, exciting things going on in the high school. We're talking about wanting to start like apprenticeship programs, internships. We were interested in having people come in. It's in the newsletter. It was in the newsletter the past few weeks.
What kind of newsletter do you have?
I have a newsletter that's online, and it's emailed out to people. It's something that you can subscribe to. So every Friday.
That would be nice if people would know, because I've never known about it until Mrs. Hart told me about it.
Yeah, it's very easy to subscribe to, and actually, if you don't want to subscribe to it and you just want to get it emailed to you, if you call me and if people call me and give me their email address, they could leave it on my voicemail or whatever they want to do, or if they want to email me and leave it on my email and just say, would you please subscribe me to the newsletter? Every Friday, I send out a digital newsletter.
Sure. And ask you for your email address now while we're on the air?
Absolutely. It is Jones, C, as in Chris, my first name, at seekonkschools.org.
Seekonkschools.org.
Correct. There's an S on the end of it. It's seekonkschools.org.
Okay.
But it's
all one.
All in one word.
Spaces.
All one, no
Uppercase,
spaces.
lowercase?
It doesn't matter.
That's
it's not
no
case
difference.
sensitive. So, and that's the same with anybody you want to get in touch with at Seekonk High School.
Yeah.
It's their last name, their first initial, at seekonkschools.org.
They all have the same
They all have the same last name.
It's
the same ending.
Last ending.
Absolutely.
That's good to know, because I know people would, otherwise you're going to get 50,000 phone calls.
Right.
So email, we all have email. Or
That's how I get on.
Why not advertise it?
And it's really easy. You just send me an email, and I can take the email you sent it from. You don't even have to retype your email in. Just say, hi, Chris, this is so-and-so. Could you please subscribe me to your weekly newsletter?
And, okay, now talk about the newsletter. How often does it come out and what's involved?
I love the newsletter. I get a lot of compliments on it.
Are you writing it?
I'm writing part of it. It's a collaborative effort. I'm not, I may be the principal of the high school, but I am definitely not the brains behind the high school. Our teachers do a lot of good work. And so I rely a lot on teachers and the other staff that's at the high school. So anytime I can tap their energy and the students' energy and things they do, I do that. So that being said, my newsletter starts off with announcements, so important dates that are coming up. That's the first section. As you scroll down, I have an area where it's called accolades and awards. So when students get bigger awards and they're recognized in the broader community, they definitely go in there. And then after that, I have a spot where I give a little report of just whatever happens to be on my mind going on in the school. I usually do
And the audio is there, and the whole, it's live.
It's live, it's an audio.
Yeah, you just punch in the dot, and it comes right on. And the one this week was very inspirational.
So, I'm glad this came up, because I really and truly did not know about it. I'm not involved with the school system, seeing I had no any children, never was involved, except for Mrs. Hart, which has sort of brought me into these things. What else do we have? I mean, I know what you're trying to do for the town, but I have a couple other questions, if you don't mind. Middle school is coming for graduation, coming into high school.
Yep.
Do you have room? How many kids do you expect, and how many kids leave from seniors and become juniors?
Okay. Those, those numbers tend to get tricky. Right now, we're
No,
sitting
I
at...
don't mean exact, just roughly.
Okay, roughly we're sitting at 596 students at the high school. And so you're looking at approximately 150 students per class. And those have pretty much leveled out. Right now our senior class is the smallest class that we have in the building. So when...
No kidding. Smallest class.
Smallest class. Now I say smallest, they're smallest by about 15 students.
Why?
Just the way it worked out
You
sometimes.
would
It's
expect.
the way the population is.
Oh, I see. No, I would expect the senior class to be the biggest because they want to get out. No?
Well, no, there is that. But what occurs is when they come through, the class numbers usually stay approximately the same, give or take 5 students maybe, as they progress through high school. When they come out of middle school, the class sometimes shrinks a little bit, sometimes stays the same, depending on how many students opt for other educational options in the area.
Okay.
So, you know, you have Tri-County, you have different VOCA options, you have some private schools.
Right.
Although, I'm really happy to say that we've been starting to draw from private schools. So gone is the myth that you get a better education at a private school, or a religious school, or a voc tech school.
Yeah.
That's gone. We have
the
high
fact it's too
expectations,
expensive.
and it's partially too expensive. And why would you pay thousands of dollars when you can get the same or better education at Seekonk High School, at a public high school?
Speaking
So-
of Seekonk High School, I have spoken to quite a few people actually, and they all think they're coming to Seekonk. They said, Jesus, the houses are expensive. I said, why do you want to come to Seekonk? They have the best school system around. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people coming now in, moving to Seekonk with children to join Seekonk High School or the Seekonk system, high school system. What do you have, what do you place it? How do you
Why is
answer
it
that?
so good?
Why is it so good? That's the question I didn't want to ask, but that's what it is.
I'm never going to argue with you if you're telling me how good the school is. But no, we put a lot of emphasis on our expectations of students. And our teachers work really hard to get students up to that next level to prepare them for whatever step they take after high school. You know, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of research going back and forth about whether four-year institutions are worth the cost anymore. And whether you want to go into that type of white-collar profession, whether you want to just get out of high school and go into the blue-collar profession. What we pride ourselves on is preparing students to succeed after high school based on their determination of success. Yes, we push them harder, but if they're successful because they want to be any blue-collar worker in any field, we give them the skills to do that. Because unfortunately, too often we think of education, and this is where it gets tough for education. We think of education as being in a box and being strict and rigid and being more about indoctrination than thinking. And there's this shift that's going on that we're really pushing hard at Seekonk High School, that you need to teach students how to think. Because as soon as you teach them that there's this one set of things that they have to know, you become obsolete. Because the world's changing at a pace that nobody can really understand or handle. So these kids are going to get out of school, and now this is the exciting part. If we teach them how to solve problems, how to be creative, and how to think for themselves and adapt to new situations, they're going to be successful, because there are jobs out there in 2 years that we never even thought of.
Never thought of it, yeah.
And they're going to be jobs not based on simple skills that you can automate, because computers are taking over. So we need to get them to think. They're going to be skills based on problem solving and the ability to be creative.
Speaking of computer, it's very embarrassing when you're on a computer in the library and you're stuck and there's a 3 or 4-year-old next to you saying, oh, just push this button. Those kids today, are they being taught computer in kindergarten, or are they just learning it automatically? I mean, children today are so advanced when it comes to computer versus us. I mean, we had to learn it the hard way when we were old, when we started computer. But today, even children from high school,
Because they've got them in their
Right.
homes.
they have them at home.
Most of them.
That's
Most
it.
of them.
They're all starting
That's
at
a
home.
fantastic question, and that plays into the whole idea of digital native. When you think of somebody, when you think of native, that means they're there, they were born there. And I feel the same way with my 10 and my 8-year-old at home. They're the same way with computers, and they don't own their own phone or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that's just the way students are brought up with all of this digital stuff. They don't know. We were listening to a song the other day, and they mentioned a telephone booth, and I asked my son if he knew what a telephone booth was, and he's like, "No, I have no idea what that is."
Or,
Or the rotary with the long cord, so you can go wherever.
Or put a dime in.
Right.
Yeah.
So their existence is so much different and exciting than ours was. And as a result, they're used to using these tools, and their brains begin to wire them in such a fashion that they pick things up, and students like to figure things out for themselves.
Right.
They like to figure things out for themselves and express themselves.
Dr. Jones, everything sounds beautiful. I only have one complaint about school systems, in
Sure.
schools in specific, especially Seekonk. You're not teaching any languages besides Spanish. Why aren't we also teaching languages? Excuse me for interrupting
No, I'm
you.
sorry.
You go to Europe, any small villages speak at least 3 languages. They're automatically being taught in school. We don't teach. The only thing we teach is Spanish, and that's not very good. Why?
We teach 2 languages at the high school. We teach Spanish and we teach Portuguese.
It's the same thing.
Right. We used to teach French, but through some issues and things like that was phased out.
Why?
I think because one of the reasons is funding. That's a large, tangled up question, but when you talk about a language program, you have to talk about how you're going to schedule it into kids' schedules. You have to talk about teachers to staff the classrooms to do it, and you have to talk about interest. One of the things at schools is that if it becomes very hard to justify teaching a language due to cost and so forth and things that are rolled into that, putting a teacher in a classroom teaching a language for a handful of students.
You know, this sounds very funny, and I don't mean to be rude here, but if you go to Europe, you talk to somebody in the street, you're asking in their language where so-and-so, they answer you back in English, perfect English. If
Well,
they're that big or this big.
There's another reason for that.
No, it's not, because they're being taught in school automatically. It's an
Right.
automatic must that every child going to public school, and I'm not talking college, I'm talking kindergarten up to they're 15, 16 when they're out of high school, has to speak a language. My sister's daughter speaks 3 languages fluent. Learned not private schools, public schools. So why can't, and what do you mean it costs money? I don't understand. That I don't understand.
To the broader point of, you're right, if you go to Europe, they speak multiple languages.
Exactly.
And for years,
And we're known as stupid Americans.
Personally, I think this is a failing, and it has to do with an ethnocentric type of view on the United States part in overall education. For the longest time, Americans didn't really have to think about speaking many other languages, except for a small population, because the world wasn't that small.
Yeah.
And where if you go to Europe, I mean, you can vacation in 2 different countries, and it's no big deal.
It's next door to each other.
Well,
Right.
it's like our states.
Exactly.
That's
Where
a
the
big
United
assumption.
States, you don't
We are
have
big
that.
and
Exactly.
huge.
So
Exactly.
And
that's
settled.
that's one part. And
The
so
whole country is.
as we catch up, there's a whole bunch of research about when it's best to learn a language. Earlier is better. Students learn languages earlier. The earlier you can put languages into a school system, the better. We've started to spread that out. A couple of years ago, we started with Spanish and Portuguese and cultural exploration at the middle school, so that they come up. But as an example of when I'm talking about money and staffing and things like that, so we have a certain number of students that come into the high school that need Spanish 1 or Portuguese 1. I'll just stick to
Or
one language to
English
get it.
one, because they only speak Spanish.
Well, that's a whole nother program in the high school that we
it
have.
isn't together?
It is together. It's called Sheltered English Immersion. That now the state has required all teachers need their Sheltered English Immersion certificate.
Explain that.
So what they do is, if you have a student that English is not their first language, they have tests that they have to take that places them at a certain level, and then we have an ELL teacher. We happen to have a fantastic ELL teacher, Donna Liberty, that we share with the middle school.
I don't understand ELL. What do you mean by
English language learner.
that? Oh, okay.
So they meet with her for a period out of their schedule, and she goes over basics. It's like it's a language class, but
language
teaching
class.
them English.
Right.
And then what happens is to get them up to speed as quick as possible, they are then immersed in a classroom with English instruction, but the teachers in that classroom have been certified